Okay, Hare Krishna. Here we go. Beginning with question 110 from Sudha Bhakti Chintamani. Let's just check if anyone else there coming in because we opened a bit late. Oh, okay, Hare Krishna. So let's go straight to 110. I was tempted to have a review of 109, but no, let's go to straight 110. Let's try and cover some ground. So everyone's ready? Mm-hmm. Have any of ISKCON's followers, by serving its mission, gone back to Godhead? Now, there's a particular example that Maharaj gives. I guess objectively, we may say yes, many have gone back to Godhead. But to true Swami, by dint of his devotional life, we can guess he's gone back to Godhead. Pankajani Prabhu and also others. But can anyone cite any other examples where you could give us solid objective evidence that this person has developed their relationship with Krishna? Bhaktivedanta Maharaj is another. We spoke about him recently. But Maharaj gives a particular example in the pages of Sudha Bhakti Chintamani.
Govind Maharaj?
No, that's another. Yeah, there's no doubt where he went. That's died in ecstasy of speaking about Radha Krishna and Rupa Bhav. And he departed the world. That's quite unique, actually. That's probably one of the. It's quite unique. But anyway, there's a more contemporary example. Although these are contemporary examples, these devotees have recently been called back by Krishna.
Murli Prabhu, what about the one? Some cases like I think New Maharaj was saying as well. This particular, I think he was Prabhupada's disciple, and he actually got up and he said, "Oh, Prabhupada, you came for me." Do you remember? We had
that's Sudama. That's Sudama.
Yeah. So does it mean still? Do you mean the same way they go back Godhead, isn't it? They've gone. So
yeah, that I can't say. That will be up to Prabhupada. Where Prabhupada took him, because Prabhupada's mission is continuing. We can perhaps ascertain that the mission of Lord Chaitanya's preaching is going on through different universes. So I couldn't say where Prabhupada took him, but that's there, and and that's an interesting case, that one, because he really went off the rails, so to speak. If there's a memories video of him speaking about Prabhupada,
and I think even in Man a few days ago, I was listening to, is it the one who was a singer, Vishaka? He sings as well. Yeah, and he gave 2 examples as well. It was wonderful class, and he said the same example. One of the disciple of Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, and I think he had AIDS, and then his mother said, "Oh, the only thing you've done good is you joined Hare Krishna." And then the next day she had this dream from Prabhupada saying that just call one of the temple in New Jersey or somewhere, and they will help you. So she did that, and then they were very happy that she did ring, and then they were helped him as well.
Yeah. So it seems there are plenty of evidences out there that one could cite that perfection, yes, it is possible, and it is possible in one life. But I'm still looking for the one that was cited from Sudha Bhakti Chintamani. I can give you some clues if you want. Do you want a clue?
Yeah.
Yes, please. We're waiting.
Waiting.
I'll say one word. Scotland.
Thinking of Mother Kulangana.
No.
Ratnaranjini.
Scotland.
Scotland is Ratnaranjini.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Well done, Rajikishori, excellent.
Yeah, well done. You got there.
Do we get a Mangalati? Does Rajikishori get a Mangalati sweet for correct answer? All right.
But Ratna Ranjini, that's quite an interesting account to read. It's in a book called Simple for the Simple. It's a small book, but it's you're not going to find that book so easily available now. There was only one print of that book, and it's quite a classic book to have.
We're not printing that, Prabhu.
No, perhaps you can ask them in Scotland if they've got any ideas of printing that again. But she was actually revealing her spiritual Siddha Deha. She was explaining bit by bit the service she actually does in Vrindavan, much to the amazement of Balabhadra and others. For example, she was, from what I can remember, I haven't got the book myself. I think I borrowed it to someone and I never gave it back. But she was describing, she was a young girl and she used to play with a ball, for example. So Balabhadra asked her what color the ball was. And she smiled. And she said, it's many colors. It's multicolored. And then it turns out her service was to pack Krishna's lunch. And then she would assist in that. So Balabhadra asked her about that because she seemed to be saying things about doing that service. And then she answered back, no, I do not do that service. I help Mother Yasoda to do that service. So she gave those details. She's the assistant. She helps Mother Yasoda to pack Krishna's lunch. And there's other things that she revealed as well that I can't remember. So
what's her name? Ratna, sorry?
And she wasn't, and the point that's brought out here, which is a good example, is that she didn't have Brahmin initiation. She didn't go on book distribution. She wasn't a sannyasi. She was, I could say she was like most of us. We're not like most devotees, and she used to like making lunch for the Sankirtan devotees, and she was a dutiful wife. And yeah.
What's her name, Prabhu, again?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same. Ratna, sorry?
Ratna Ranjini.
Ratna Ranjini.
Yeah.
Okay.
And her picture's there in Krishna Bhavan. You'll see her picture in where they keep some of the dresses, the outfits, and her pictures there. I remember she had cancer. She had a brain tumor. And I remember she came to visit a temple at the time. She was quite...
When was it?
When? This must have been in the 90s. In the early 90s. Balabhadra brought her down to London for a last visit to see London Ishvara. And she came. It's quite dramatic to read. It's quite, parts of it is quite difficult to read because she has these really intense seizures. Anyway, so that's answer to that. Yes. Have any of ISKCON's followers, by serving its mission, gone back to Godhead? Yes, they have.
And I think Murli Prabhu as well, there's lots of them in Radha Desh as well. I remember there was quite a few instances as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, so we can have rest. We can have faith in what Prabhupada's given us, faith in what ISKCON has to offer, that by following the teachings, by sincerely taking up and the process of Krishna consciousness, then we can go back to Godhead in this life or the next life or the life after that at some point. But let's hope this life. Okay.
Do find the book, please.
Yeah, well, I don't have it. If anyone has the book, it's called Simple But It's Perhaps I have.
Meeta Mata, she's in Scotland.
Well, they don't have it. It's that they don't have it. It's out of print.
Okay.
It's out of print. Out of print. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at question 111. Is it true that Rupa Goswami states that faith is not necessarily required for those wishing to quickly arouse ecstasy and love? All right. This is based on a quote, I think from the Nectar of Devotion, which says that just by coming, and if an offenseless person, I'm giving the answer now, but if an offenseless person comes in touch with the main 5 angas of bhakti, what's the 5 main practices of bhakti? The 5 most important ones that Rupa Goswami gives.
Chanting, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, living in Mathura.
Yeah.
Chanting Srimad Bhagavatam.
Deity worship.
Deity worship.
And associating with devotees.
Yes.
Yeah, so that there it said these 5 are so powerful that even a faithless person who is not offensive by coming in touch with these can experience bhava or even prema. They can experience love. Now, that experience might be a flash experience. It might be something which they then carry with them for the rest of their life. Yeah. Like, for instance, you see some persons when they, for instance, the Rath Yatra ceremony, sometime, and there's also stories of devotees on Harinam and people who get overcome with emotion on seeing the devotees to the point of tears coming from their eyes. I know I read one description of that where one lady, she couldn't understand why she was crying so much. Tears were coming from her eyes, and basically she described she felt like her heart was melting, and tears of appreciation just streaming down her eyes, and she couldn't believe the emotion she was having. She couldn't understand it. She was experiencing bhava, prema, because she just saw the Vaishnavas in Kirtan, in a Rath Yatra ceremony. So, of course, for the process to really, one will have to follow the process of Guru Padashraya, taking shelter of a spiritual master, etc., and ongoing hearing from advanced devotees in order to really enter into that stage as a consequence of their purification. But still, it can happen. So it is true. Yeah. It's interesting because faith is the first thing that's required to advance in spiritual life. Adol Shraddha. But the potency of bhakti is so powerful that it can, in some, arise feelings of ecstasy and love, you know.
Would it be a Purva Rag, as we were discussing? It's a few lifetimes ago, they would have practiced bhakti. And suddenly in this life, they come in front of chanting Hare Krishna or a temple.
That's also a consideration. That also may be consideration. That's a good point. That may be a consideration, but also maybe not as well. It's just emphasizing the power of bhakti or the power of devotional service. So even someone who doesn't have previous contact may, if they're not offensive, experience something really sublime, something they've never experienced before, a joy and a happiness. That's the power. That's why it's very important to for us to be visible. For instance, Rath Yatra is very good for that. We're right in people's faces. It's difficult. Sometimes they can ignore a Harinam, and they ignore us on purpose. Some people they make out we don't exist. they make out they can't hear us because of envy and other things. But Rath Yatra is really difficult for them to kind of not notice. You know. Anyway,
Are you saying that offense? No, so anybody that's not committing any offenses, right? So I was thinking, Jay and Vijay, like, because they didn't commit any offenses to the Vaishnavas, they did due to Nityananda, but they developed that straight away, the mercy they developed that love. Does that make sense?
Yes, say that again.
You know, like not committing any offenses to any Vaishnava.
Yeah.
Due to that, they developed, Jay and Vijay developed Krishna Prema so quickly, you know.
Yeah, Jai and Vijay. I'm a bit lost on that because I mean, because they were cursed.
Yeah, but because you were saying that offenses, like faith.
Jaga and Mada it is.
Jaga and Mada.
Yeah, Jai and Mada. Okay, yeah, that's better.
Sorry, I got Jaga and Mada.
Jai and Vijay, I got confused there.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, yeah. Jaga and Mada. Yeah, peculiarly by some quirk of good fortune, they didn't blaspheme the Lord, except when they did make an offense to Nityananda. When they broke the pot over his head, but then Nityananda stepped in and begged Lord Caitanya to give them mercy, especially when they became repentant. Yeah, so they didn't
have no faith, right? In
Sorry?
the beginning, they didn't have no faith. Like, you know, when they were told to chant, they didn't want to chant. But
yeah, you could say that. Yeah, they had no faith in the process. They actually took it as a joke.
Yes.
Yeah, they in their drunken stupor. They didn't. Yeah, they didn't.
The only good fortune was they didn't commit any offenses to any Vaishnavas.
Yeah, except the Nityananda, but Nityananda was very merciful. Yeah, but interesting. They didn't commit offenses to Vaishnavas, so they was blessed. But they definitely did commit offenses to plenty of jivas.
Yes.
That there was abundance of offenses there, but that was all forgiven. But the deal was that they should change their ways. That was the deal. That was what Lord Caitanya said. You know, change your ways. Yeah. So that's the answer then to that one. Yes, it is true. So 112, let's look at that. If at ecstatic devotion, devotees can see Krishna in their hearts, then why should they want to see him with physical eyes? All right. This is called Spurti, where Krishna manifests within the heart of a devotee. May manifest within the heart of a devotee. Like, for example, Little Narad, that wonderful story of Little Narad having darshan of Krishna in his heart, spruti, a manifestation from the heart. But then such devotees, these ecstatic devotees can see Krishna in the heart, but they maintain a hankering to see him with the physical eyes. So if Krishna's non-different, if he's there in the heart, why is that hankering there?
Would they see Krishna in the heart as the four-armed Vishnu?
No, they Krishna. They say Krishna. Said here it's Krishna. It doesn't say Vishnu.
Okay.
Well, we haven't got the eyes to see it, have they? Really?
Yeah, they haven't got the eyes, but more we're asking. But
so
yeah,
just like when, for instance, like Arjun, you know, he wanted to see Lord Krishna's Virat Roop. So that's the way I was explaining in that way, but obviously it's not right, is it? What I'm saying?
No, that's one angle. That's one way to look at it. But we need to go in another direction here. In other words, these devotees, yeah, it's another.
His personal form. To see him in person.
Yeah, to see him in person.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is basically. So why do they want to see him in person if they've seen him within the heart? Which he's there in person in the heart.
They want to relate, because to see that it's not some sort of illusion. If you see him physically, you can relate more because we're so attached to these bodies.
Yeah, Mother Guy is going in the right direction here. Yeah. So, in other words, although seeing Krishna in the heart is quite wonderful, it's actually not enough for devotees at the stage of ecstasy. Basically, they consider the Lord appear in the heart is a mere foretaste of seeing him directly. You know, they see it as just a little indication compared to seeing him directly. Yeah.
Murli Prabhu, could be probably the devotees are not ready to see him, so obviously he just gives a little taste.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
And obviously,
yeah. I just read.
And it's just like Dhruv. Was it Dhruv Gopal? I know it was Dhruv, wasn't it?
Dhruv, yeah. The Lord Vishnu appeared before Dhruva Maharaj.
That's right.
Appeared before Chitraketu Maharaj as well.
Yeah, Chitraketu Maharaj. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So basically, they consider the vision that they're having in a material body is just a foretaste. It's just a little show of their companionship, which will be fully manifest in the spiritual world. You understand? So it creates a sense of longing for actually being with Krishna. I think as Mother Gaia said, to be able to offer service. Yeah.
And I think like when you have little taste, then obviously you, as you said, you're hankering and you would like obviously to meditate more, then you will see him real, one-to-one, rather than just,
Yeah, that's correct. So,
sorry, didn't Gopa Kumar go to that planet where everyone was meditating on the Lord in the heart?
Yeah, we're going to come to that in the readings. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah,
and I don't know the reason why he didn't stay. He didn't stay because.
Well, that's the reason he didn't stay.
Yeah,
it wasn't enough for him. He's used to a different type of relationship. And then he went even to the abode of Vishnu, and that wasn't enough for him.
But there is a planet where people go who have perfected that meditation. These people, they were very happy meditating.
Yeah.
They just meditated all the time.
Yeah,
that's what they did on this planet.
Yeah, there be yogis, there be Shanta Bhaktas, which means they're Shanta Bhaktas, which is neutrality, which means there be no service to them. That's we spoke about that nectar of devotion. So there's Shanta Bhaktas. Yeah. So there is no particular service that's actually done. So sometimes Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't include that in one of the rasas. He just starts from servitude. It doesn't start from neutrality. But yeah, this is what we're hearing in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where we're hearing about different planets, the whole planetary systems and the different types of worship going on. So so there's an example of yogis. They're fully yogi. They're bhaktas, but they're practicing Astanga, deep meditation, and yoga. That's their practice of bhakti. Well, it's bhakti in one sense because they're seeing Vishnu and they have devotion to him, but there's no actual service there. So yeah. So that's why here ecstatic devotees want to see him with physical eyes, because what they see is just like a taster. It's a little taster, a little taster. So they're eager for they're eager for the whole thing.
I think it's pretty painful to talk about this, really.
No, I think it's lovely.
No, I think it's
painful. Why would it be painful? Because the thing is that it's a nectar that we one day we will be able to, see the Lord like that.
One day.
Hope.
Yeah, so it's good to hear about. In one sense, these topics, it gives us an appreciation for the underlying mood, which we need to practice, which is the bhava seva, or the mood is separation. That's the underlying mood that we should be practicing our bhakti. And so here you see examples of that and I think my Guru Maharaj said, so I can't quote it exactly, but I remember him saying that there's a deal at the stage of bhava that Krishna does, and that's he appears to a devotee once. That's it.
Well, if he does, and he doesn't come back again, then is it? Am I right?
That's so.
Then it's not fair.
You have to go to him.
I told you not to go down the road.
But still, Krishna will manifest. You know, his Leela is not different from his name, fame. He's actually a holy name. So devotees' only solace then is the holy name, which then reveals Krishna's name, fame, quality, and pastimes. You know, and that's their only solace that they can get after having seen Krishna directly, even spurti within the heart, or shakshat, where he appears in person. The only thing left in this world is the holy name. That's the only thing that can appease a devotee's heart. There's nothing else. Only the holy name, you know, can actually give them some relief. Anyway.
So we'll start crying now or later?
Yeah, before we start crying, let's move on.
No, let's cry now. At least
yeah,
be all
right.
clear.
No, it's
so here's
I know what you mean.
So here's a relevant
Chandravali,
question. Here's a relevant question then after that discussion. Yeah. How do ecstatic devotees become qualified to see Krishna?
chanting. You said.
Yeah, I've been asked here to go to page 326. So I'll go there.
Can I say something, Prabhu?
Please, no, yes.
Vinod Thakur says in Haram Chantamani, there is no knowledge as pure as the name, and no vows as powerful as the name.
Yeah. There's no
no name, no meditation more effective than the name.
Yeah, that's the holy name.
Yeah. So there is no greater renunciation than the holy name.
And being absorbed in the holy name. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he also says that there's nothing else within the three worlds apart from the holy name.
Highest liberation. Highest liberation.
Yeah, highest liberation. Yeah. The glory of the holy name are unlimited. Oh, I've got it written here. Okay, so how do ecstatic devotees become qualified to see Krishna?
So what does it say, 3 to 6? What does it say?
Yeah, here, a purified heart may serve as a mirror for Krishna's pastimes, but that's referring to the previous question, but it's not sufficient qualification to see Krishna. Jiva Goswami says that the root from which the desire tree of Krishna's direct association grows is, what we mentioned many times, is the insatiable desire. Lobha. Greed. Yeah, loliam, lobha, greed. Yeah, that's from the Priti Sandarbha of Jiva Goswami.
We are greed, we are hankering for him, but he doesn't listen to us. What can we do?
Oh, that's a sign of lobha. It's a sattva. That means you're really desiring it. All right.
Right.
So now we're entering into a different subject now, on the qualification to hear Krishna's pastimes. That subject, all those questions were on the subject of spontaneous devotion. Yeah. All these questions, all about spontaneous devotion. I'm sure you remember that discussion as well.
Yes, remember that.
Okay, so here we are now. This is question 114. Okay, this is an interesting question. What constitutes superficial reading? Maharaj mentions this. He mentioned this in the beginning, I think in the introduction of Sudha Bhakti Chintamani. If you have the book there, I can tell you what page it's on.
44.
Well, let's see if anyone can, before you look. It's a difficult, I must admit, it's a difficult question to answer if you're not familiar.
Superficial reading.
So not reading very deeply, not really studying, not really, superficial means superficial.
Maybe like a storybook without getting anything.
Yeah, let's just see if I can bring up what superficial means. Existing or occurring at or on the surface. Yeah, very nice description. Yeah, just surface reading.
In a way, ticking. I read three sloks in Bhagavad Gita, 2 in Srimad Bhagavatam. I've done my day's reading, but not really understood it.
Well,
really
that's it. what Maharaj is referring to is in the beginning of the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada speaks about spontaneous devotional service and the specific symptom of eagerness for a devotee. So he describes there that if someone is eager to attend Mangalarti or to render some service, this is spontaneous devotional service. So when I teach Bhakti Sastri, Nectar of Devotion, I always ask the question, okay, so I ask, so who likes to attend Mangalarti? And everyone puts their hand up. So are you on, so that means these devotees are on the level of spontaneous devotional service? And some say, yeah, that's what it means. It doesn't. That's superficial reading, because later on, Prabhupada gives further qualifications for Raganuga, spontaneous devotional service. And, for example, one should be at the stage of Nishta, one should be free from all anatas, etc., etc. And he gives more details. So a superficial reading, we might conclude, oh, yeah, I like going to Mangalarti, so I must be on the stage of Raganuga Bhakti. So that's superficial reading, because Prabhupada gives a few more qualifications down the line, you know, and which is, for instance, as the ones we're familiar with, free from lust, anger, greed, you know, we should be a stage of at least Nishta. All right, so that's super, yeah. So what Maharaj says here, he says, when readers fail to see a deeper meaning and author intends, their reading is said to be superficial. They see only a shallow, unsubstantial gloss of words. Shallow, too, is their attempt to separate the author's intended meaning from the greater context of his overall teachings. Scripture texts they illuminate and the writings of the Acharyas. So, yeah, so that's why Prabhupada, when you read Srila Prabhupada's books, there's some things he will say which need explaining or need answers to, because he seems to be saying one thing. But actually in further study, actually on the whole the context of Prabhupada's teachings, then it's something else is meant in what Prabhupada's actually saying. I'm trying to think of an example. Well, there's one example we gave from the Nectar of Devotion. But there's, for example, there's examples where Prabhupada speaks about chanting, and one comes to the stage of ecstasy, not just Prabhupada's purpose, but there's many verses that describe just by chanting. But if we study Prabhupada's books, then we can understand that whenever Prabhupada says just by chanting the holy name one can experience Krishna, he's speaking about chanting without offense. But he doesn't always say it. He may say chanting, then one becomes overwhelmed with love, and hairs stand on end, and tears come from the eyes by chanting the holy name of the Lord. But what he's saying is by offenseless chanting. Right? So there's an example. So it's superficial. And there's there's many other examples. All right.
Okay, can I ask something about,
Please, yeah.
Say you want to read Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, CC, you know, you want to read it daily, even a little bit, but your mind keeps wanting to read other things as well, you know, things that really inspire you. Then how do you balance? I mean, you don't get time to read everything. How does one balance that? You feel like, you know, so many books are there that I really want to read, but I feel I should also read these. So by the time I read this, then not much time to read the others. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I think that's it's a familiar question, I think, but I'm thinking of Ram Maharaj. He would say you have to get your nectar. You have to get your nectar. So, for instance, I do reading and study, and sometimes I'm reading and studying on presentations I have to do, like technical. And sometimes it's not really, sometimes it's not what I really want to read, although it's nice to read it, but sometimes I'm reading it and studying it for purpose of not relishing exactly. Well, in one sense I'm relishing it, but not to the extent that I would doing up. So I do both. Like, you have to get your nectar. You got your reading. It's always good to systematically read Srimad Bhagavatam, read through it. And we're going to be studying Bhagavad Gita soon, for example. But if there's something that inspires you, where you're really getting your nectar from, then you should make time for that. You have to make time for that. You have to nourish yourself. So you just go where the nectar is. So you may do half an hour here, 1 hour, just systematic, being honorable to Bhagavatam and reading through all the names of the kings, going back, all the planetary systems and all the... It's amazing, actually, the purports there. There's some real magic in Prabhupada's purports there as well. But anyway, putting that aside, sometimes we have to read through all this, sometimes it can be quite arduous sometimes. But perhaps we just want to read Krishna book, we just want to read Venu Gita or, Krishna's pastimes. Yeah, Govinda Lilamrita or whatever. So we should make sure we are doing that. If we have a natural attraction for that, you should make sure that you're feeding that natural attraction, and you have to make time to read Krishna's pastimes if you're particularly attracted to Krishna book or other books about Krishna's pastimes. Then yeah,
because when we were reading like other books, my head was even in a better kind of space.
Like even reading these books that we're reading, Sankalpa Kaumudi and Sudha Bhakti Chitamani, is quite technical. There's not much Leela there. So it's nice, but we do need to hear Leela. We do need to hear about Krishna, directly hear about Krishna's beautiful face, his lotus eyes, and Radharani, gopis, and the gopas, and the cows. That's very important that we do that. Otherwise, how are we going to remember these things when when our heart's purified and we during chanting?
Because like the thought, like, oh, Radharani runs to the top of the house because she knows Krishna is going to come down the road, and runs down to peck her, like that. You want to really relish that kind of thing as well.
Yeah. So no one's stopping you. You just have to put it in. You have to do it. You should want to do it. Actually, you should. Yeah, you shouldn't. You should. In other words, you shouldn't. If you've got a taste for these things, then if you don't come up to that stage and you don't go where that is, then that's where my Guru speaks about this, where you're not taking a step that you need to make, and that could cause problems in your spiritual life. You need to make that step. If that attraction's there, then you have to go to it. Of course, we have to do it under guidance as well.
Yeah.
All right.
I was thinking Bhakti Keshav Maharaj. Swayam Bhakti Keshav Maharaj.
Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj, yeah.
Yeah, how he was saying that he was sitting at Radhakund and reading, and he was like how the book explained what Radhakund's like, jewels, that and everything. And he said how he was just seeing kind of material things. So it's like you want to read something and really get into the bigger picture of it.
Yeah. So no one's stopping you. Go ahead.
Time. Get up another 1 hour earlier.
You have to make time for it. It's like we're going on a bit, and this. I hope everyone's still with us, but it's still. But it's like breathing. It should be like breathing, where you just have to. You just should hear about Krishna. All right. So that's the answer. You have to make time for it.
Time for it.
You have to. Okay, so how can hearing any topic about Krishna be considered incomplete? So perhaps we need to give a context of this. Let me just read this here. Actually, it's on this subject, actually. So, for example, reading, let me just read this, it might be easier. I'm trying to. Just as the company of devotees is considered mature when their talks are saturated with topics of Krishna. Right. Hearing of Krishna is considered mature when discussion of his past, when discussions are saturated with topics of his pastimes. According to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when hearing does not include Krishna Leela, it is incomplete. Interesting. On the question you're asking, it's related. It is unsystematic and incomplete. But when the hearing process includes Krishna's pastimes, and the hearer is addicted to hearing them, it is pure and complete. So this is the context of this question. How can anything about Krishna be considered incomplete? So every topic about Krishna is complete in its own right. But just as a staircase is incomplete without one of its steps, even though each step is in itself complete, so the full range of topics about Krishna is incomplete without the discussion of his pastimes. When hearing lacks completeness in that way, it does not fully awaken relationship with Krishna. To hear Krishna's pastimes is to hear of his sweet names, wonderful tributes, irresistible forms, charming abodes, and eternal companions. Such systematic and regular hearing of Krishna's pastimes is the full expression of the hearing process. And because it includes all other topics, it is most complete. All right, that kind of gives another aspect, answer to the question that Mother Chandravali asked. So here it's saying it's more, you have to complete, you have to complete your reading. But it doesn't mean there's something missing. It's just as described here. If you're just reading about creation, for example, and the creation of the atom, time from the atom, there's a chapter in the Bhagavatam describes time from the atom. It's not about Krishna's pastimes, yeah. But actually, Bhagavatam is complete with the 10th canto. Without the 10th canto, then Bhagavatam would not be complete, except with those verses which allure to Krishna's pastimes, which are found in brief in the 1st canto. Yeah. Without 10th canto, without reading 10th canto, then your reading of Bhagavatam remains incomplete. That will be the cherry on the cake. Okay. Anybody else in there who's with us today? Any comments on these things? Mabu Vishalni, Shrudami Radhika, Kaya, Vajikishore, Nimai Mata, Navanga, Suniti, Anupama. Right, you're welcome. Let me just read here. Let's go to the next question. Okay. Check the time. How many questions I've got left? Plenty. Did Lord Caitanya and his followers give instructions on hearing directly about Krishna?
Just chant the holy name.
All right, so Sunitapuri is saying no. He just told us to chant the holy name. Anybody else?
No.
No. Anybody else? We've got 2 no's so far.
Well, Prabhupada, even in the beginning, he was reading on the Janmashtami day, he was reading Krishna stories to
he was reading Krishna book.
young devotees.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's correct. Yeah.
Very early in the moment, and as the Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the cantos came out, he was instructing everyone to distribute them. The people who never heard of Krishna, they were given Srimad Bhagavatam or Krishna book.
Yeah, and there's a question on that comes up. We might not get there today, but perhaps next is a question on why Prabhupada did that. But in other words, yes, Lord Chaitanya did give specific instructions and his followers. For instance, we have Nectar of Devotion, where Rupa Goswami speaks about different stages of devotion, speaks about also Krishna's pastimes. Yeah, I'm just reading here.
So it would be like Krishna book, you know, pastimes of Krishna, like Krishna book, not going in a deeper level.
Yeah. So basically, what we're going to bring up here is just this is a reminder. You may be familiar with this. Maharaj gives, he speaks about different types of hearing. He speaks about incidental hearing, purposeful hearing, practice hearing, and specific hearing. Okay? 4 types of hearing. So incidental hearing, as we think, and does anyone can tell us what incidental hearing is? This is perhaps the easiest one to get. Of Krishna's pastimes. Basically, this means to hear, like for instance, Ras Leela or Bhagavatam, just as a subject matter in which it is presented. Like in Bhagavatam class a few years ago, we read through the 10th canto, a couple of years ago now. So perhaps more, actually more, good few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. We actually read through the 10th canto. So we would have read Krishna Leela, the reunion, the separation of the gopis, Venu Gita, the reunion of the gopis and Krishna and Ras Leela, etc. But the devotees listening would have been incidental. It just means it comes along in what you're hearing. You're not specifically doing purposeful hearing of those pastimes. It's incidental. Yeah, is that clear? Yeah, incidental. Next one is purposeful hearing. So this refers to a specific subject or a pastime that's of special interest. You know. So, for instance, Prabhupada, he summarizes. Prabhupada explains that if we want to know more about Madhavacharya, then we can read a book called the Madhav Vijay. And Prabhupada gives the name of the author. So that's purposeful hearing. Yeah. So you may study certain subjects that's of a special interest. Yeah. So that's called purposeful hearing. Whereas, for instance, if someone's doing a study on Rupa Goswami or has to do a presentation on Chaitanya Charitamrita, then they're going to purpose on Madhya Leela, then they're going to do purposeful hearing. Next one is practice hearing. This is when devotees hear topics about Krishna with the purpose of recalling these topics in the course of their service. For instance, you might read about Govinda Lila Amrita speaks about Radharani cooking for Krishna. It goes into great detail about the cooking for Krishna. So if you're regularly cooking, then you might read about that. Yeah, it's practiced hearing. Or devotees may read about these topics in order to recall them while chanting Hare Krishna. That's called practice hearing, where you're doing it to enhance your meditation upon Krishna in your service and in your chanting. Yeah, that's called practice hearing. Then we have, let's time check, 56. Then we have specific hearing. So that's the most advanced type. That's specific hearing is on Krishna's, we've mentioned a few times, Astakaliya Leela, Krishna's 8-fold daily pastimes. Yeah, where one is, let me just read here. As just mentioned, in practice hearing, devotees listen to and meditate on individual pastimes, but not necessarily in sequence. In specific hearing, devotees hear the full scope of Krishna's Raja pastimes as they unfold throughout the day, 8 parts of the day. 2 types of advanced devotees practice this kind of hearing. Those who have realized their spiritual form and those who have not. So those who are practicing Raganuga sadhana, they will hear this specific hearing of Krishna's unfolding pastimes throughout the day. All right? That's answer to number 16, a long way round to answer number 16. Yeah. And we've got 2 minutes left, but let's just field this question then. Should devotees read the Mahabharata?
Yes, of course, because Bhagavad Gita is contained in Mahabharata.
Yeah,
Unless
okay.
we know
So
the background.
Mahabharata is saying, of course, yeah, because there
Yeah,
within
I
the
agree.
Bhagavad Gita, yeah.
And it's got Bhisham Pitama as well when he was, last death of his, he was in the arrow and his body was there. So that's wonderful. Says in Bhagavatam regarding him as well. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. So Marge mentions that by reading Bhagavatam, maybe to some people, because we're attracted to Bhagavad Gita and Krishna's words, but also a lot of people can become purified by hearing of so-called politics, mundane topics of the world, politics and intrigue, which then purifies that these topics become purified by actually contact with Krishna. And especially as you devotees, you both quickly understood, especially when I read the gem in the Mahabharata, which is the Bhagavad Gita. So in this way, devotees become further qualified to enter into elevated topics. So yes, devotees should read Mahabharata, especially because Bhagavad Gita is there. And also, I also, love reading Mahabharata. I have to be careful if I open it. Difficult for me to put it down. Yeah. Becomes Sudra. Yeah. Politics and diplomacy. It's all quite exciting. So, all right. So,
yes,
did well today. We answered a good few questions. Went through 8 questions there, more than last week. I think we covered 4 questions. We had a nice discussion last week as well. So next week we're gonna look at these questions. Okay. Quick flash look at these questions. All right. Okay, so we'll stop there for today, and we'll be together tomorrow. Some of you joining us for Harinam Chintamani. That should be going ahead at the same time as usual, which is what time again? It's
5 to 6.
Yeah, 5 to 6. This one's a little bit earlier, isn't it? It's 5 to 6. Okay. So thank you, everyone. I hope you found this of interest. I'm quite interested here, and I wish everyone a very wonderful evening, and look forward to being with you again tomorrow. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yes, His Great Muli Prabhu
Thank
ki.
you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Namo Namah.
Hare
Hare Krishna, everyone.